All right, guys, I want to give you my 7 takeaways for what I've learned about nutrition over the past 2 years due to my deep dive on nutrition. So, point number one, there is only one optimal diet, and that diet is carnivore. This is optimal for all humans, regardless of whether you live in Singapore or Norway or India. Every single human is a member of the Homo sapiens species, and our species has evolved to eat only one type of food, and that is meat. No human has a cecum like to digest plants, and so we are different from gorillas. Each species has its own appropriate diet. If you try to go to the zoo and feed animals, they will tell you do not feed the animals because if you feed them something different than their species appropriate diet, they will die. All right, that's point one. Point number two is any deviation from the optimal diet will cause health problems. And the closer you get to carnivore, the better your diet is. This is why it's crucial to do strict carnivore. Being strict is essential. Even spices and condiments are non optimal. For example, I personally cannot eat black pepper without sneezing. And also, when you look at other diets like Eric Berg's keto diet, the only reason that is a good diet is because it's close to the carnivore diet. That's the only reason. And the more that people add keto bread and keto cookies to the keto diet, the worse the keto diet becomes because it becomes farther from carnivore. So you can literally make the keto diet a crappy diet if you want to, just by adding more non-carnivore foods. So it's really on a continuum, and the farther in distance that you go from carnivore, the worse your diet becomes. And in fact, the worst diet is the vegan diet because that is as far from carnivore as you can get. Vegan is literally worse than the standard American diet because at least the standard diet has burger meat. But the vegan diet cannot support human life. Vegans' brains shrink over time, they have infertility, and their babies cannot even survive through childhood on veganism. All right, point number three. Getting on the optimal diet is the most important health hack that you can do in your life. That's why Brian Johnson will never have optimal health despite spending $2 million a year and taking 100 supplements per day. It doesn't matter what health hacks he does, because he has the wrong diet, he will not have optimal health. And similarly, all chronic disease disappears once you go on the optimal diet. And conversely, every chronic disease is caused by eating the wrong diet. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, autism, MS, mental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, OCD, digestive disorders, leaky gut, and thyroid disorders, all of these are caused by not eating the carnivore diet. Carnivore is the panacea. It cures every single disease, and there is no medication out there that can do that. It's only diet that can do that. And if you have 10 different health conditions, when you go on carnivore, all 10 of those health conditions will disappear. All right, point number four. Let's get into the specifics of what specifically causes disease. And I want to emphasize that I've learned that it's not industrial chemicals. It's not ultra processing. It's not microplastics. It's not PFAs. It turns out it is plant toxins. Plants are trying to kill us. They have evolved defense chemicals that are intentionally poisonous to animals like us. And the two plant toxins that appear to be at the center of chronic disease are oxalates and fructose. Now, of course, there's many other plant toxins out there that are important and dangerous, but I want to highlight those two because those are at the center of chronic disease. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, this makes sense because there has been a conspiracy to increase both fructose and oxalates in our diet. High fructose corn syrup was put into our diet, and also genetically engineered fruits, which are sweeter than before, have been put into our diet. There's also been a massive effort to get oxalate in our diet with the Popeye cartoon promoting spinach and the whole green smoothie propaganda. So once again, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you can see how our enemies have tried to get those two toxins into our diet. And those two toxins can essentially account for every chronic disease. And carnivore diet is the only diet that cuts out both of them. Eric Berg's keto diet cuts out fructose but not oxalate. Paul Saladino's animal-based diet cuts out most oxalates but not fructose. So carnivore is the only truly safe diet. And To be clear, there are many other plant toxins that also contribute to disease, but those two seem to be the most important. It's crucial to also emphasize that industrial chemicals are not the primary cause of disease, and that's because you can see that clean vegans who eat organic veggies still get chronic disease, while dirty carnivores who eat factory farmed meat magically cure their chronic disease. So, and furthermore, if you look historically, when did chronic disease appear in human history? It didn't appear at the Industrial Revolution, it appeared at the Agricultural Revolution. The Agricultural Revolution, thousands of years ago, was the beginning of chronic disease for the human species. Point number 5, eating high fat defines humanity. So we are even more high fat than other carnivores, like dogs. And I would argue that eating high fat is what makes humans truly human. Bone marrow and brains were actually the first foods that the earliest humans ate. The early humans were scavengers, and they would come upon a skeleton, and they would take rocks, because we could use tools, and they would crack open the bones with the rocks, and then they would eat the bone marrow, which is high fat, out of the bones. Similarly, they would take the same rocks and they would crack open the skull and they would eat the brain of the animal, which is also very high fat. I just want to mention that brains are indeed a superfood, and we've been tricked and psyoped into avoiding brains by false propaganda. The whole zombie propaganda and mad cow propaganda was meant to trick us away from eating brains. Back to the high fat thing. So the most common mistake on carnivore is to not eat enough fat. So many vitamins are actually fat soluble. Vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin D. These are vitamins you can't get from just eating lean meat. Similarly, cholesterol is a crucial nutrient needed for every cell in the body. It's been unfairly demonized, and all signs point to the fact that high dietary cholesterol is crucial for longevity, and low cholesterol leads to disease and mortality. When considering which fats to eat, focus on saturated fats. Saturated fat is actually better than the unsaturated fats like omega-3s. And that's because saturated fat is more stable. In today's modern age, food is getting transported around in trucks. And during that time, you don't want the fats to be oxidizing and becoming rancid. And the concern is that omega-3s do quickly become rancid, so non-fresh seafood is a concern. Focus on getting high amounts of saturated fat from foods like beef, and you won't need to worry about the fat becoming oxidized or rancid. Point number 6, sugar is not a food, it's an addictive drug. And it's actually more addictive than cocaine. The best strategies to deal with sugar and carbs is actually to just quit cold turkey. Eating a little bit of carbs makes you crave carbs even more. Experts say that when carnivores add a little bit of carbs back into their diet, they eventually add a lot of carbs back in, and they eventually end up back on the standard American diet. So adding a little bit of carbs just puts you on the path to having no diet at all. There are no healthy carbs. In addition to insulin resistance, carbs feed fungal infections, and that's why cutting all carbs from my diet cured my lifelong allergies, because it starved the fungus that was living in my sinuses of its preferred food, carbs. On top of that, carbs have deuterium, which is heavy hydrogen. Plants concentrate deuterium in their sugars. Deuterium slows down the motors in your body, making you more lethargic, having less energy, and it damages your mitochondria, contributing to cancer. All right, finally, last point. Raw meat is healthier than cooked meat. On the carnivore diet, I noticed my body was craving raw meat. My body kept telling me to cook my meat less and less, and eventually I listened to my body and I started eating raw steak, raw ground beef, raw eggs, raw fish, and raw pork, all from high quality sources, of course. Raw meat does have more vitamins. It has more taurine, it has more B vitamins, it has, of course, more probiotics, and it has less inflammatory chemicals, less carcinogens, less oxidized fats. Once again, omega-3s like DHA, EPA are damaged by high heat. So by eating meat and fish raw, you help to preserve those fats in their original form. I recommend adding some raw meat to the diet from good sources. All right, thank you. Those are the 7 points that I've learned in my health journey. I hope that's helpful. Thanks very much for listening.